And now our final guest, the German-based company Swarm Markets offers a secure environment for companies and investors to grow their personal wealth autonomously in both the crypto and traditional financial markets, helping them to overcome compliance barriers and operating in a regulated environment in Germany. Joining us now to tell us all about this is Philipp Pieper, co-founder at Swarm Markets.
Well, thanks for being here. Great to have you host me.
So, Philipp, you arrived here together with the German delegation to Israel, the Minister of Finance delegation to Israel. Can you tell us a little bit more about the reason for this delegation?
Sure. As you probably know, the German regulatory landscape has evolved quite significantly, and so it became apparent and important to the German Ministry of Finance to start interacting with fintechs in a broader sense, but also more specifically with blockchain startups. And so since 6 months, we've been part of a group called the Digital Finance Forum, where the ministry is trying to get input from the industry about what are good regulations, how to evolve the regulation, how to what are best practices, and interact with the industry on those things. So the trip that now the German finance minister put together for this trip here was about actually exchanging thoughts with the industry in Israel. And obviously, because Israel is a startup nation and actually has been very successful in different other categories, it was important to actually get input how the fintech industry is being handling issues, regulatory issues here, how to potentially collaborate amongst the startups in the industry. And I've been chosen as one of few to join the trip to actually have a collaboration locally here and just visit and be here.
So you're one of the veterans of the digital security space. This program is about digital securities and how it's going to change the private market. I mean, can you give us a short explanation about digital security and its implementation in the private market?
Sure. So digitization or tokenization is obviously this act of turning assets of whatever kind, whether those as equities or bonds or any kind of other right, into a digital version of that. And that means basically to produce a digital twin, a codified version of that onto some kind of blockchain infrastructure. And by doing that, being able to, to do things differently than in the traditional financial ecosystem. So that means that you can have 24/7 tradability, that you ideally, and we'll still have to get there, but ideally actually have cheaper ways how to handle those securities. You potentially have more transparent redemption rights or any kind of other procedures around a security. And so this is not new. This has been going on for a couple of years, that people have been exploring how to best do that, how to best match this digital entity with a sort of real world asset. But what's now happening is that we're coming to not just a technology sophistication, but we're also coming to a market and regulatory sophistication, how to better handle the circumstances under which you do this. So the goal here is that with all the clarity that we're now having, that we can reach a state where this becomes really not just a feasible exercise in general, but actually a competitively feasible exercise in comparison to other alternatives to create a market. And I think mainly said that the primary issuance has been pretty much figured out for the past couple of years, meaning that what I create the primary tokens with, or basically what do they represent. What's been more challenging is the secondary markets, which means actually how do I trade it, where can I trade it, under which circumstances can I trade it, and this is not technically speaking that was more from a regulatory side. So when you say private markets, I think there's part of the tokenization realm that actually applies very much to actually assets that are not yet a public asset. And the hope there is that by actually applying blockchain-based trading, blockchain-based automation processes, that you effectively can create liquidity in markets that usually don't have that kind of that liquidity, that you can get participants to engage in those procedures that normally couldn't be engaging. So ideally that you have a more objective market pricing, you go away from anecdotal price discovery, and that in the end that you have a transparent procedure to actually be able to trade securities from investor A to investor B.
And Philipp, can you also tell us maybe a little bit more about what you're doing at the swarm markets and the regulatory approvals that you receive from BaFin and the support that you have from them? I mean, how are your discussions with the regulators? And if you maybe have any tips for the audience about how to communicate with the regulators?
Okay, so Swarm, the company that I co-founded and sort of has been around since 2017. We started off as a DAO, which was basically just producing open source infrastructure for the primary issuance of digital securities. And that's an open source stack that can be used by anyone. In order to complement that with the secondary trading ability, we were looking for a long time about the sort of regulatory environments where to make that happen. And we're looking in different jurisdictions. But then suddenly in 2019, actually Germany came about with the amendment of the Banking Act. And we saw that as a huge opportunity to dive in and get sort of a legitimate endorsement by a regulator that is sort of a globally accepted industrial nation regulator that means something from a capital markets perspective. So they put two things together. One is actually sort of they legitimized sort of the token landscape to be proper financial instruments, meaning also that anyone who wanted to touch and service those would have to be licensed. And the second thing that they did was they said, okay, anyone who's been already in this realm can then actually sort of continue operating as long as you have been sort of are engaging into a regulatory process. And that's exactly what we did. Since we already were in that segment, we were able to continue doing that. We actually went into the regulatory process. We got provisional licenses to then actually sort of be able to continue operating the way that we have. So what we are now is we are basically sort of a servicing firm. We're a sort of a securities trading brokerage bank that can actually use the licenses to do secondary market activity.
Philipp, this has been really great. I'm so happy that you took the time to meet us here today. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Unicorn TV is brought to you by Symmetria. Symmetria offers ongoing liquidity management to attract and retain the best talents. Give your team the benefit they desire and deserve and win the competition over talents with Symmetria.